The alarm screams at 6:30 a.m. Your hand reaches automatically for the phone before your eyes even open. The screen illuminates your face in the darkness. Notifications, messages, endless streams of information flooding your barely conscious mind. You scroll. You consume. You react. But here's the question that will haunt you. Are you awake? You think consciousness is binary, asleep or awake, dreaming or living. But what if I told you that most of us exist in a state of being that is neither one nor the other? A twilight zone where we're physically awake, but mentally sleepwalking through patterns so ingrained, so automatic, that we mistake them for choice. Look around you. Everyone is moving with purpose. Everyone convinced they're making decisions. The businessman rushing to catch his train, the student cramming for exams, the parent juggling responsibilities. All of them are certain they're in control of their lives, all of them potentially prisoners of their own minds. The most sophisticated prison ever constructed has no walls, no guards, no keys. It's built from thoughts you didn't choose, beliefs you never questioned, and patterns you can't even see. The prisoners are convinced they're free because they can walk around, make choices and express opinions. But choice isn't freedom if the options are predetermined. Expression isn't authentic if the thoughts aren't your own. You think you're awake because your eyes are open. But what if awakening has nothing to do with physical consciousness? What if the deepest sleep is the one where you dream with your eyes wide open, convinced that the dream is reality? That question, about who's really living your life, isn't philosophical poetry. It's a practical inquiry into the mechanics of mental captivity. Your mind generates approximately 70,000 thoughts per day. Most of them are repetitions of yesterday's thoughts, which were repetitions of the day before. You wake up and immediately slip into familiar grooves of worry, planning, judging, remembering. The same mental pathways fire in the same sequence, creating the illusion of a consistent self while trapping you in invisible loops. Carl Jung understood this when he wrote about the unconscious mind's power to possess us. We don't have thoughts, thoughts have us. They arise from depths we can't fathom, carrying emotional charges we didn't authorize, leading us toward reactions we didn't consciously choose. The voice in your head, the one you assume is you, might be more like a radio station you've been tuned to for so long that you've forgotten other frequencies exist. Consider how a simple criticism can ruin your entire day. Someone makes an offhand remark, and suddenly your inner dialogue erupts into defensive arguments, hurt feelings, or angry justifications. You didn't choose to feel this way. You didn't decide to spend your mental energy on this reaction. Yet here you are, completely absorbed in a story your mind created about what someone else's words mean about you. These patterns often form in childhood as survival mechanisms. A child learns that being perfect prevents criticism, so they develop a mental program that constantly scans for potential mistakes. Another child discovers that being invisible keeps them safe, so they create a pattern of self-effacement that persists into adulthood. These protective mechanisms become mental prisons when the original danger no longer exists, but the pattern continues running automatically. The Buddhist concept of samsara describes this perfectly, the wheel of repetitive mental states that creates suffering through unconscious reaction. We mistake our conditioned responses for authentic choice, our emotional reactions for truth, our mental commentary for reality. The mind becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting the same patterns infinitely while convincing us we're seeing something new. Eckhart Tolle calls this the pain body, the accumulated emotional charge that colors our perception and drives our reactions. It feeds on drama, conflict, and victimhood, growing stronger with each unconscious identification. We become addicted to our own suffering because it feels familiar, feels like us, feels real. But if our thoughts control us, if our emotions drive us, if our reactions define us, then who or what is truly living your life? The answer to this question isn't just philosophical. It's the key to understanding whether freedom is possible or if we're destined to remain prisoners of patterns we can't even see. The individual mind's susceptibility to pattern and conditioning didn't escape the attention of those who understood power. While you've been wrestling with personal mental patterns, entire systems have been designed to exploit and direct them on a massive scale. Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew and the father of public relations, discovered that you don't need to control people directly. You just need to control what they think they want. In the 1920s, he convinced American women to smoke cigarettes by associating them with suffrage and independence. He called them torches of freedom. The women thought they were making an empowered choice. They were actually following a script written by someone who understood their psychological vulnerabilities better than they did. This wasn't manipulation, it was mental architecture. Bernays realized that human beings don't make rational decisions based on facts. They make emotional decisions based on unconscious associations, then rationalize those decisions with logic afterward. If you could control the associations, you could control the choices while leaving people convinced they were freely deciding. The techniques refined during wartime propaganda became the foundation of modern advertising. Political campaigns and social engineering. Pavlov's experiments with dogs revealed that behavior could be conditioned through repetition and reward. What worked on animals worked on humans. We just needed more sophisticated stimuli. Consider how your political opinions formed. You probably believe you arrived at them through careful consideration of facts and values. But examine more closely. How much did your family environment influence these views? Your social circle? The media you consumed? The authorities you trusted? Layer by layer, your supposedly independent thoughts were shaped by sources with their own agendas, their own conditioning, their own unconscious patterns. George Orwell's 1984 wasn't prophecy. It was a blueprint. The concept of thought crime, doublethink, and memory holes described mechanisms already in operation. The most effective, totalitarian system doesn't need to suppress dissenting thoughts. It makes them unthinkable by controlling the conceptual frameworks through which people understand reality. Modern democratic societies perfected this approach. Instead of one official truth, you get the illusion of choice between pre-selected options. Instead of overt censorship, you get algorithmic filtering that ensures most people never encounter ideas that might threaten their existing beliefs. Instead of propaganda, you get entertainment that carries ideological messages while you're distracted by the story. The educational system, religious institutions, media corporations, and political parties all function as transmission mechanisms for collective mental patterns. They don't need to conspire. They're all products of the same underlying conditioning systems, perpetuating the same basic assumptions about reality, success, morality, and meaning. You inherit not just your genes, but your conceptual framework, your emotional responses, your behavioral patterns. The language you speak shapes the thoughts you can think. The culture you're born into determines which emotions are acceptable, which desires are legitimate, and which dreams are possible. But here's the most unsettling part. If your opinions are programmed, if your desires are manufactured, if your identity is constructed from inherited patterns, then what part of you, if any, is authentically yours? And more importantly, can you ever be free if freedom itself might just be another programmed concept, designed to make slavery feel like a choice? The answer to that question becomes more complex in an age where your psychological profile is more valuable than your bank account. The conditioning systems that once required generations to implement now operate in real time, learning and adapting to your responses faster than you can become conscious of them. Every click, scroll, pause, and purchase feeds into algorithms designed to predict and influence your next move. You think you're browsing the internet, but the internet is browsing you, mapping your desires, cataloging your fears, identifying your psychological pressure points with inhuman precision. The recommendation engine doesn't show you what you want to see. It shows you what keeps you engaged. There's a crucial difference. What you want might challenge you, inspire growth, or provide genuine satisfaction. What keeps you engaged triggers dopamine releases that create compulsive behavior patterns, ensuring you return for more stimulation. TikTok's algorithm is perhaps the most sophisticated attention capture system ever created. It doesn't need to know what you consciously prefer. It measures how long you watch when you scroll away and which content makes you interact. Within hours, it constructs a behavioral profile that predicts your responses more accurately than you can. The For You page isn't showing you content you chose. It's showing you content that your behavioral patterns indicate will keep you scrolling. This creates a feedback loop more insidious than traditional conditioning. Pavlov's dogs learned to salivate when they heard a bell because they associated it with food, but they knew they were being conditioned. You don't even realize you're in the experiment. The algorithm adapts to your resistance, learns from your attempts to break free, and incorporates your rebellion into its model of your behavior. Instagram knows that showing you perfect lives will make you feel inadequate, which makes you more likely to keep checking to see if your own posts are being validated. YouTube knows that conspiracy theories and outrage content trigger engagement, so it gradually guides you toward more extreme versions of whatever captures your attention. Facebook discovered that negative emotions spread faster than positive. So its algorithm prioritizes content that makes you angry, afraid, or envious. The most disturbing aspect isn't that these systems exist, it's how seamlessly they integrate with your existing mental patterns. The algorithm doesn't create your insecurities, your biases, your compulsions. It identifies them and amplifies them. It becomes a digital mirror of your unconscious mind, reflecting your patterns to you in an endless loop that reinforces them. You believe you're making choices about what to watch, read, or buy. But choice architecture ensures that your options are pre-filtered to match your psychological profile. The illusion of infinite possibility masks a system that's increasingly narrowing your actual range of choices, guiding you toward predictable behaviors that serve commercial interests. The smartphone in your pocket knows more about your mental patterns than you do. It knows when you're lonely, anxious, bored, or seeking validation. It knows which emotional states make you most susceptible to particular types of content or advertising. It knows how to interrupt your attention at precisely the moment when you're most likely to respond. You're not browsing the internet. The internet is browsing you, learning your patterns, predicting your responses, and gradually reshaping your mental landscape to ensure your continued engagement. The question isn't whether you can escape this system, it's whether you can even see it clearly enough to make conscious choices about how you engage with it. Seeing the system clearly sounds simple, until you realize that the very mind trying to see is the product of the conditioning you're attempting to observe. It's like trying to escape a maze when the walls are made of your own thoughts. Your brain didn't evolve to seek truth, it evolved to ensure survival. This means it's wired to avoid discomfort, seek familiarity, and maintain consistency in your beliefs about yourself and the world. When new information threatens your existing mental framework, your mind doesn't evaluate it objectively. It activates defense mechanisms designed to preserve psychological stability. Cognitive dissonance isn't just an abstract concept. It's a physical discomfort that arises when conflicting information challenges your beliefs. Your mind will go to extraordinary lengths to resolve this discomfort, often by rejecting the new information rather than updating your worldview. The more central a belief is to your identity, the stronger this defensive response becomes. Consider how you react when someone points out a pattern in your behavior that you can't see. The immediate response is usually defensive. They don't understand, they're projecting, they have their own agenda. This isn't conscious dishonesty. It's your psychological immune system, protecting you from information that might destabilize your sense of self. Freud identified several defense mechanisms that operate below conscious awareness. Denial refuses to acknowledge threatening realities. Projection attributes your own unacceptable impulses to others. Rationalization creates logical-sounding explanations for behavior driven by unconscious motivations. Sublimation channels difficult emotions into socially acceptable activities. These mechanisms aren't character flaws. They're features of human psychology that helped our ancestors survive in environments where self-doubt could be fatal. But in modern contexts, they often prevent the very awareness that could lead to genuine freedom. The mind creates what psychologists call the sleeping guard, a part of your consciousness that monitors threats to your psychological comfort while you remain unaware of its operation. This guard decides which thoughts you'll allow yourself to think, which emotions you'll let yourself feel, which possibilities you'll consider real. Most people experience brief moments of clarity when the guard falls asleep, usually during a crisis, transition, or intense experience. Suddenly, you see patterns that were invisible moments before. You recognize how certain relationships drain your energy, how particular habits sabotage your goals, how specific beliefs limit your possibilities. But as soon as the moment passes, the guard returns and the insights fade back into unconsciousness. This is why self-help books feel so compelling when you read them, but so difficult to implement. The insights make perfect sense to your conscious mind, but they threaten the unconscious patterns that actually drive your behavior. Your psychological immune system activates, finding reasons why the advice doesn't apply to your situation, why you're different, why change isn't really necessary. The most sophisticated trap is believing that understanding equals transformation. You can analyze your patterns, trace their origins, and explain their mechanisms while remaining completely controlled by them. Intellectual understanding often becomes another defense mechanism, a way of feeling like you're addressing problems while avoiding the discomfort of actually changing. The mind doesn't want to lose control, even if control is the very thing imprisoning it. The familiar suffering of known patterns feels safer than the uncertain freedom of unexplored possibilities. This is why awareness is so hard. You're not just fighting external conditioning. You're fighting your own mind's resistance to seeing what it doesn't want to see. Yet sometimes, despite all the psychological defenses and conditioned resistance, something cracks. A moment arrives when the sleeping guard can't maintain its vigilance, and you glimpse reality beyond the patterns that have been running your life. These moments rarely arrive during comfort. They come during crisis, loss, or intense questioning, when the familiar structures of meaning temporarily collapse. A relationship ends, revealing how much of your identity was borrowed from another person. Fake career disappointment shows you how your self-worth was tied to external validation. A health scare forces you to confront priorities you'd been avoiding. In these cracks between certainties, something unprecedented becomes possible. You can observe your thoughts without immediately believing them. You can feel emotions without being overtaken by them. You can notice patterns without automatically following them. The realization isn't dramatic like Hollywood depicts. It's more like recognizing you've been wearing glasses you forgot you had on. Suddenly, the blur that seemed normal reveals itself as a distortion. The thoughts that felt like absolute truth show themselves as optional interpretations. The emotions that seemed overwhelming appear as temporary weather patterns in consciousness. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this when he wrote about the moment when we realize our values aren't eternal truths, but human constructions. Viktor Frankl discovered it in concentration camps, when he recognized that meaning isn't found in circumstances, but created through conscious choice. Jiddu Krishnamurti pointed to it when he suggested that awareness doesn't require effort. It requires the cessation of effort, the ending of the constant mental struggle to become something other than what you are. The awakening isn't about achieving a permanent state of enlightenment. It's about recognizing that you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your patterns. There's something in you that can observe all of these phenomena without being controlled by them. This observer isn't another mental pattern. It's the space in which patterns arise and dissolve. This recognition comes with profound implications. If you're not your thoughts, then you don't have to believe everything you think. If you're not your emotions, then you don't have to be driven by every feeling that arises. If you're not your patterns, then you can choose which ones to express and which ones to let fade. But the realization also comes with responsibility. Once you see that much of your behavior has been automatic, you can no longer plead unconsciousness. Every choice becomes conscious. Every action becomes deliberate. Every response becomes an opportunity to express awareness rather than conditioning. The moment of breaking pattern isn't a one-time event. It's a recurring recognition that deepens with practice. You don't wake up once and stay awake forever. You wake up again and again, each time seeing through another layer of unconscious conditioning, each time reclaiming another aspect of your authentic response to life. You don't wake up once. You wake up again and again, each time seeing a deeper truth about the nature of mind, the mechanics of conditioning, and the possibility of conscious choice in a world designed to keep you unconsciously reactive. But here's what the spiritual teachers and self-help gurus rarely mention. Awakening to your mental patterns comes with a price. The more clearly you see the unconscious forces driving human behavior, the more isolated you may feel, from people still operating under their influence. You begin to notice how conversations repeat the same patterns, how people defend positions they haven't examined, how social interactions often serve to reinforce shared illusions rather than explore truth. the comfort of unconscious belonging. The warmth of being part of a group that shares your assumptions becomes unavailable when you can see the assumptions for what they are. 2. Wake up is to lose the comfort of dreaming alongside others. The dream isn't necessarily wrong or bad. It provides meaning, connection, and purpose for billions of people. But once you've seen it as a dream, you can't unsee it. You can participate, but you can't believe in it the same way. This creates what Albert Camus called the absurd condition, the gap between human need for meaning and the universe's apparent meaninglessness. Awareness often begins with recognizing that the meanings you inherited aren't objectively true, but creating new meaning requires accepting responsibility for that creation. Carl Jung wrote about the burden of consciousness, how awareness brings both freedom and responsibility that many people aren't prepared to carry. It's easier to follow inherited patterns than to consciously choose your responses to life. It's more comfortable to blame circumstances than to recognize your role in creating them. It's simpler to react unconsciously than to respond with awareness. The awakened person faces a choice: retreat into cynicism and superiority, or find a way to remain compassionate toward the unconscious patterns in others while staying true to their own awareness. Neither path is easy. Cynicism protects you from disappointment, but isolates you from genuine connection. Compassion keeps you connected, but requires enormous patience with behaviors you can clearly see as unconscious. Some people become missionaries, trying to wake others up, only to discover that consciousness can't be transmitted through argument or persuasion. Others become hermits, withdrawing from society to avoid the constant confrontation with unconsciousness. Still others learn to live simultaneously in multiple worlds, aware of the patterns, while still able to participate in the human community. The paradox deepens when you realize that even the desire to wake others up can become another unconscious pattern. The ego that was once invested in being right about worldly matters becomes invested in being right about spiritual or psychological matters. The same mechanisms that created the original conditioning can co-opt the awakening process. Perhaps the deepest realization is that awakening isn't a destination, but a constant choice. Each moment offers the option to respond consciously or react unconsciously. Each interaction provides an opportunity to express awareness or fall back into a pattern. Each challenge invites you to practice presence or retreat into familiar defenses. The question isn't whether you can escape the human condition. You can't. The question is whether you can engage with it consciously, making choices from awareness rather than being driven by forces you can't see. This engagement requires both courage and humility. Courage to see clearly, and humility to recognize that seeing clearly doesn't make you superior to those who don't. We return to where we started, that moment between sleep and waking, between unconsciousness and awareness. But now the scene looks different. The person reaches for their phone, pauses, and sets it aside. They look into the mirror hanging on the wall, but instead of seeing only their reflection, they whisper, "I see you," not to the image in the glass, but to the awareness looking through their eyes. This is the completion of the circle, recognizing that the observer you've been seeking isn't something you need to achieve or become. It's what you are when you stop identifying with everything you're not. You're not your thoughts, though thoughts arise in you. You're not your emotions, though emotions move through you. You're not your patterns, though patterns express through you. The awakening isn't about escaping the system. It's about seeing it clearly enough to choose consciously how you engage with it. The conditioning doesn't disappear when you become aware of it, but your relationship to it transforms completely. Instead of being unconsciously driven by patterns, you can consciously choose which ones to express and which ones to transcend. The world won't change because you wake up. The algorithms will continue operating, the conditioning systems will keep functioning, and the collective patterns will persist. But you will change, and that changes everything about your experience of being human. You'll still feel emotions, but you won't be controlled by them. You'll still have thoughts, but you won't believe all of them. You'll still participate in society, but you won't be unconsciously shaped by it. You'll still face challenges, but you'll meet them with awareness rather than automatic reaction. The greatest freedom isn't the absence of conditioning, it's the presence of choice. When you can see your patterns clearly, You can decide which ones serve your authentic expression and which ones limit it. When you understand the forces trying to influence you, you can engage with them consciously rather than being unconsciously manipulated by them. This is the flame that awareness kindles, not a burning away of your humanity, but an illumination of it. In that light, you can see both the beauty and the tragedy of the human condition, the magnificent complexity of consciousness trapped in patterns, and the incredible possibility that opens when someone chooses to wake up. The mirror reflects not just your face, but your capacity to see beyond the reflection. The flame burns not just for you, but as an example that awakening is possible. That consciousness can choose to be conscious, that freedom exists even within the most sophisticated systems of control. You are both the prisoner and the key, the sleeper and the alarm, the dreamer and the moment of awakening. What you do with this recognition, whether you close your eyes again or keep them open, is perhaps the most important choice you'll ever make.